everyone, it's Mel with Quilting Room with Mel, and I am so excited to show you my pattern for the Seaside Adventure Row Along. Now, if you're watching this not on the blog, check the link in the description. It'll take you over to the blog. You'll be able to get the pattern. You'll be able to see what other rows are available for the row along, and you can join us. So I have my fabric that I've made just out of my simple 2.5-inch squares. The pattern has how many you need. And I have my template for my jellyfish. And I printed this. It's got a crease in it. I kit my projects up, in case you didn't know that, just into plastic Ziploc bags. I put all the pieces in there. But for us here at the Quilting Room, we don't normally do applique projects, so this is a little different for us. So we need to trace around our template here so we can cut that out. So there are several ways you can do it. You can, you know, hold it and trace it, but for me, the fabric tends to, or not the fabric, the pattern tends to shift, and then things aren't quite right. And so I'm going to find where I want to cut my jellyfish out of on my fabric, because it really doesn't matter. And I'm going to go here because I like that fabric. And then I want to weight down my template. So you can do that by buying pattern weights. You can purchase them. There are crochet patterns where you make little tubes and you fill them with coins. There are sewing patterns where, you know, you sew a little shape and you fill it with like beans or something like that to give it weight. My country's going to show a little here. And these are from Tractor Supply store. Farm Implement store, not Tractor Supply. I don't have one of those. I don't live in a big enough spot for that. And I just place these, and it holds the pattern down while I trace. So I'm going to trace around it, and I'm going to use a ballpoint pen, one, so that you can see it, and two, it doesn't matter what I trace with, because the line will never be seen. We don't have to worry about it being washed out or ironed out or anything like that. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. So you can see the line that I've traced all the way around, and I'm going to do that to all 4 of my fabrics, and I'm going to cut 4 out of the interfacing. Okay, and this interfacing has a bumpy side and a smooth side. It's got some glue on it so that we can iron our stuff down and keep it temporarily stuck. So once we get it traced on all 4, we're just going to cut on the line and cut these shapes out. And once I get that done, I will show you how to sew it together. Okay, before I cut my pieces out of my interfacing, I want to show you what I did. It was folded in half from the shop, so it's got a nice crease up there because I bought it a while back. So I just placed, no, I did here, and then I flipped it over, and I'm going to cut all 4 of my interfacing pieces at once, just to make it easier. If that kind of scares you or intimidates you, you're fine to fold it out and trace it on 4 times. This is just how I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work for you, do it the way it works for you. Okay, so I have my 2 pieces cut, and we're going to put them right sides together. So on our interfacing, the bumpy side, and I don't know if you can see, the camera will focus on that. You can kind of see the bumps. And that side's smooth. And if you can't see it on the camera, that's fine. You'll be able to feel it. Like, you can hear the difference. Okay, so I'm going to put bumpy side to the right side of my fabric. And I'm just going to sew all the way around. No openings, just all the way around my half circle. And then we will turn it right side out. Just one thing before I go sew. When I sew, I'm going to sew it just like I have it here. The fabric will be up against the feed dogs. That way the teeth of the feed dogs don't catch on the interfacing. Okay, so I have it sewn. And before I turn it, I'm going to clip the seam. And what I mean by that is I'm going to carefully cut the curve every so often, being careful not to cut my stitches. And this is so that curve will lay nicer. Okay, so I have it clipped. Now, this is the scary part. Not really. We need to make sure that we separate our fabric from our interfacing, because we're going to cut a hole in the interfacing. We don't want to cut a hole in our fabric. Now we can turn it. Now, some people will cut a lot of this out and just leave, you know, a little around the edge. I don't know what I would do with that other interfacing, and it's not going to affect the project to leave it in. There we go. Now I will probably get my purple thing and poke these corners out a little bit better, but you guys know how to do that. But for right now, we're just going to set this aside, and we're going to grab our fabric that's left over. Okay, so I have my fabric that's left over from cutting the top half of my jellyfish out, and we're going to cut bias strips from it. And I'm going to show you how to do it without turning this into a square. But I'm going to use a different ruler than I normally use. It's still a Quilter Select ruler, but this one is pink instead of the traditional yellow. And of course on the camera you really can't see that. But a portion of all the sales from this particular ruler go to, I'm going to read it right off of here, breast cancer research with the Dr. Susan Love Foundation. So anytime that I can purchase something that a portion of the proceeds go to breast cancer research, I do that. That's how I lost my mom, was to breast cancer. So if I needed another 6x12 ruler, one for upstairs and one for downstairs. And if a portion of my money goes to a good cause, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to move things around here just a little bit so you can see it a little better on camera. And on our rulers, we have diagonal lines, and I'm looking for the 45, but I've got my 45, and I'm lining it up on the straight edge of my fabric. And there's another 45 that goes this way, so I'm lining it up on that corner. And I'm just going to whack off this corner. Might be time for a new blade. And I'm going to, this little piece, chuck it. And now, I'm just going to cut strips the width that the pattern calls for by lining up that measurement on the cut line. And I'm just going to zip through this, and we'll be right back. All right, we are ready to finish our jellyfish. So I have my background fabric, and is this not gorgeous? It is from Northcott, our fabric sponsor for the Row Along. So, and I have my pieces of my jellyfish, and this is really where you get to kind of play. So you want to, I would leave a 1/2 inch around my square. You know, I've got a pretty good size square here. And the same way with positioning your jellyfish. So your jellyfish doesn't have to go straight. You can go at an angle. And the same way with your legs. So I have my, you know, our bias strips that we cut. And you can decide how long. Let me scooch this over so you can see the whole jellyfish leg. You can decide how long you want your jellyfish legs. You could also cut these strips with pinking shears or with a wavy blade in your rotary cutter if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to get, I'm only going to put 4 legs. So I'm going to get them laid out to the length that I want, and then I'll show you how to finish it up, okay? Okay, so I have my jellyfish up here pinned. My legs are floppy, and I plan on leaving them that way. Again, this is going to be a wall hanging, so it's not going to see a lot of washing. So having the floppy legs kind of gives you a little texture. If you don't like that, you know, you don't want the movement, you don't want people to see the back side of your, you know, see your seams, you're welcome to stitch it down. So how I'm going to finish this is I'm going to take it over to my iron, and that's why I pinned it. My iron's on the other side of the studio, and I don't trust myself to pick this up and carry it over there and not lose all my hard work of laying it out. So I have pinned. I'm going to give this a good press so that the fusible interfacing holds all this down, and then I'm going to stitch around it. Now for the stitching, there are loads of options, and it's entirely up to you, excuse me, how you want to do it. You can stitch it with invisible thread, just a straight stitch all the way around so that no one sees it. You can stitch it with a contrasting thread so everybody sees your stitching. You can stitch it with a matching thread, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use an Aurifil variegated yellow so it kind of blends in some places and kind of stands out in some places. As far as the type of stitching you use, that is another thing that's entirely up to you. A lot of people use a blanket stitch. Some people use a zigzag. Some people just straight stitch. You can use a satin stitch and give it kind of an embroidery look. The one thing I do recommend is if you're going to use that kind of stitching, use a satin stitch. You want some sort of tearaway interfacing on the back side of it, just so that you don't get a lot of puckers. I'm going to use a zigzag because I'm on my Necky BU, and those are my choices, is straight or zigzag. But I just want to sew all the way around it and make sure that the top portion is stuck. I want to make sure I don't have any white sticking out on my jellyfish for the interfacing, because I don't want to see it, anyone to see that, and I want to make sure that I do catch the top of the legs when I sew. So I'm going to go sew, and you can see my jellyfish in just a minute. Okay, so I have stitched down my jellyfish top, and I may end up stitching down these legs. For right now, I like them moving, but if I change my mind, it's not going to be a big deal. You can stitch them down if you want to. You don't have to. I want you to be creative and make this your own. So if you want to, great. If you don't want to, that's great too. And I'm going to show you my stitching. So you can't see it on the front because my yellow blended really well. But I did use a dark green on the bottom just so that you guys could see it. I did a narrow zigzag, and I caught both, or I tried to catch my applique and the back fabric just to give it, you know, some, make sure it stays down. To do that, I used the notch on my foot, and I lined that up with the edge, and that let it go off. Don't stress about it though. Okay, just have fun. This is supposed to be a fun way to use up your scraps and have something a little different. Thank you for joining us here in the quilting room and for the Seaside Sew Along. If you are new to the quilting room, you came over because of the Seaside Row Along, and you'd like to join us, you can find me at quiltingroomwithmel.com. And there you'll be able to find my social media links. But all the links are there on the blog. You're going to head over that way anyway so that you can grab this pattern. So you'll be able to find them. Thank you everyone who has participated in the row along. It was quite an honor to carry on Marion's memory this way. And I am thankful that you guys put your trust in me to host it. Until next time, everyone, have a great day.